envelope was already sitting on my chair when I walked into the conference room. Not on the table, on my chair. Like someone wanted to make sure I couldn't miss it, couldn't pretend I hadn't seen it, couldn't sit down without picking it up first. My brother was already there, across the table, arms folded, watching me with that look he gets, the one that's supposed to read as patient but really reads as satisfied. My sister-in-law was next to him, scrolling her phone, barely glancing up. My mum was at the head of the table, hands clasped, wearing the expression she reserves for conversations she's already decided the outcome of. I picked up the envelope and held it without opening it. "Before you say anything," my brother said, "I want you to know this came from a place of love." I've learned that when people open with that sentence, what follows is almost never love. I'm going to back up, because none of this makes sense without the part I've never told anyone outside of my accountant and my attorney. 3 years ago, I sold my company for $240 million. Not to a competitor, not in some hostile takeover. I built a health data analytics firm from a spare bedroom in my apartment when I was 26, bootstrapped it for 4 years, raised a Series B that valued it at $60 million, and then accepted an acquisition offer from a healthcare infrastructure company that wanted the platform and the team. I walked away with my founder's stake liquidated, taxes paid, and enough left over that I will never have to work again unless I choose to. I chose to keep working because sitting still makes me anxious and I genuinely like building things. But I did not tell my family. Not my mom, not my brother, not my aunt who sends me LinkedIn requests every 3 months asking if I know anyone hiring. Nobody. Part of that was caution. I'd watched a friend's family dynamics collapse inside 6 months of sudden wealth, the requests metastasizing faster than the goodwill could keep up. Part of it was that my family had a particular way of relating to me that I wasn't sure I was ready to disrupt. I was the second child, the one who didn't have the instincts for business, according to my father, who said that to my face when I was 22 and told him I was leaving my consulting job to start something. He passed away before the acquisition. I don't know how to feel about that still. Some days I'm glad he didn't see it, because I think it would have complicated things in ways I'm not equipped to untangle. Other days, I think I would have given a lot just to show him the wire transfer confirmation. My brother took over my father's construction supply company. He's done fine with it. Not spectacular. Fine. He drives the same truck my dad drove, goes to the same church, lives 6 blocks from where we grew up. He married a woman who once told me at Thanksgiving that she was surprised I'd turned out so normal given that I was always a little intense. She said it like a compliment. My family's mental model of me was set somewhere around 2015 and had not meaningfully updated since. To them, I was the younger sister who moved to Austin, did something with computers, rented an apartment, and came home for Christmas looking tired. That worked fine for a long time. I had my life, they had theirs, and the distance kept things manageable. Then my grandmother died. She left a will, a real one, drafted by a real estate attorney, updated 2 years before she passed. She'd owned 3 properties, a house in Knoxville where she'd lived for 40 years, a small commercial lot adjacent to it that she'd leased to a dry cleaner for decades, and a lake cabin in East Tennessee that the whole family had used every summer my entire childhood. She split the house to my mum. She left the commercial lot jointly between my brother and me, equally. She left the cabin to my brother, me, and our cousin, jointly, 1/3 each. My brother called me the week after the funeral. He didn't ask how I was doing. He opened with, "We need to talk about what Grandma left you." The phrase "what Grandma left you" was doing a lot of work in that sentence, as if her estate had presented me with an inconvenient surplus that needed to be managed. What he actually wanted was for me to sign over my share of the commercial lot and my third of the cabin. Not sell, sign over. His reasoning, delivered in the measured tone he uses when he thinks he's being reasonable, was that he lived there. He'd been the one to maintain the properties over the years. He and his wife had plans for the lot, and the cabin was more useful to a family with children than to me, a single woman in another city who probably wouldn't get out there much anyway. I told him I'd think about it. I didn't tell him that the commercial lot, based on the most recent county appraisal plus the lease income capitalized at market rate, was worth somewhere between $400,000 and $600,000. I didn't tell him that I'd already had a real estate attorney review the will and confirm that my interest was clean and unencumbered. I didn't tell him that I'd looked up the dry cleaner's lease terms and that it was month to month, meaning the lot's highest and best use was almost certainly redevelopment. I didn't tell him any of that, I just said I'd think about it. 3 weeks passed. He called again. This time his tone was different, less measured, more pressured. His wife had found a developer interested in the lot. They needed to move quickly. He understood that I was busy with work, but this was a family matter and it required my attention. I told him I was still thinking. 2 more weeks. This time my mum called. She'd clearly been brief. She started with how much she loved both of us, transitioned into how important it was to her that we stay close, and arrived, eventually, at the suggestion that just letting your brother handle the properties would be the path of least conflict. That phrase, the path of least conflict, is one I've heard my entire life directed specifically at me. It's the family's shorthand for, you should accommodate. I have a therapist in Austin who I'd been seeing for 3 years. She would have a great deal to say about that phrase and where I learned to comply with it, and when I started unlearning it. I won't go into all of that here. What matters is that I recognize what was happening, and I made a decision. I said yes to the meeting. The meeting. Not to signing anything. I agreed to come home, sit down with my brother and my mum, and talk through the situation. My brother's idea, framed as a family discussion, he'd booked a small conference room at a hotel near my mum's house. Neutral ground, he said. I almost laughed. He didn't know that I'd been in that hotel before. I'd stayed there twice when I was in Knoxville for due diligence on a small acquisition my current company was evaluating, a healthcare records startup that ultimately didn't close. I'd eaten breakfast in their restaurant, used their business center, charged it all to my corporate card. He didn't know that 2 months prior I'd been approached by the ownership group of that hotel's parent company about a potential advisory role. They knew my background. We'd had coffee. Nothing had come of it formally, but we were in contact. He didn't know any of that. To him, it was just a hotel near Mom's house. I flew in the evening before and checked in under my own name with my own credit card, which I can afford. I had dinner alone at the restaurant, ordered something I actually wanted, and went to bed at a reasonable hour. The next morning I was in that conference room 12 minutes early. I set my bag down, took my jacket off, and that's when I saw the envelope on my chair. I picked it up. I didn't open it yet. I stood at the window that looked out over the parking lot and the highway beyond it, and I thought about my grandmother, who used to wake up at 5 in the morning to make biscuits from scratch when we visited, who called me my girl until the week she died, who I do not believe for a single second would have wanted this. Then I opened the envelope. It was a quitclaim deed, already drafted, already notarized with a blank for my signature. It transferred my interest in both the commercial lot and the lake cabin to my brother for the stated consideration of $1 and other valuable and mutual consideration. There was a sticky note attached. My brother's handwriting, the notary is available at 11. Just needs your signature. I set the document face down on the table and took my seat. They came in together, which I'd expected. My brother first, then my sister-in-law, then my mum slightly behind them, which told me something about whose idea this meeting really was. My brother sat across from me, same posture as always. My sister-in-law sat beside him with a folder of her own. My mum sat at the end closest to me and reached over to touch my hand, which I let her do. "I'm glad you came," she said. "Of course," I said. My brother nodded at the envelope. "So you've seen it?" "I have." "I want you to know we had an attorney look it over. It's clean, it's simple. We're not trying to take advantage of anyone." There's something almost beautiful about a person saying we're not trying to take advantage of anyone while handing you a document designed to transfer valuable real property to themselves for $1. Almost. "I'd like to understand the valuation," I said, "for the lot specifically." My sister-in-law opened her folder. She had a printout, a county property card showing the assessed value of the lot at $112,000. Assessed value, not market value. In Tennessee, assessed value for commercial property is typically set at 40% of appraised value, which meant the county's own implicit estimate of the lot's worth was closer to $280,000 before you factored in the lease income or the development potential. I did not say that yet. That seems low, I said. My brother leaned forward. It's what the county has it at. The county assessment and market value aren't the same thing. Look. He switched registers, went to the version of his voice that he uses when he's decided patience has run out. I've put years into managing those properties. I've handled maintenance calls. I've dealt with the tenants. I've paid for repairs out of pocket and settled up later with the estate. You've been in Austin. You haven't contributed anything. Grandma left it to you because she loved you, not because she expected you to actually manage it. The practical thing here. Was the practical thing, I asked, is for you to let the people who are actually there handle it. My sister-in-law nodded with the gravity of someone who believes they are witnessing a reasonable conversation. My mum squeezed my hand. Sweetheart, this is just how it makes sense. You have your career. You're not going to be dealing with a dry cleaner in Knoxville. I looked at her. She genuinely believed what she was saying. That's the part I find hardest to hold, that there wasn't calculation in her, just a long history of assuming I would bend. I want to show you something, I said. I'd brought a folder of my own. I took it out and set it on the table. I didn't open it yet. 3 months ago, I said, I had an independent commercial real estate appraiser look at the lot. Comparable sales, income approach, development potential under current zoning. I opened the folder. The appraisal was on top. I slid it across to my brother. Market value came in at $560,000. That's my 33% interest valued at approximately $185,000. My brother looked at the document. He didn't pick it up immediately. That's one property, I continued. The Cavern appraisal is behind it. Lake-adjacent recreational property in East Tennessee has had significant appreciation. My third comes in at just over $90,000. Total interest in both properties, approximately $275,000. The deed in that envelope would have transferred all of it to my brother for $1. My sister-in-law's energy shifted. She picked up the commercial appraisal and started reading it. My brother sat back. My mum had gone very quiet. I'm not going to sign the quitclaim, I said. I want to be clear about that, but I also don't want to fight. Grandma didn't want that, and I don't want it either. So what do you want? My brother asked. His voice was flat now. A fair transaction or a managed co-ownership arrangement. If you want to buy my interests, I'll sell them at appraised value. The lot at $185, the cabin at $90. That's $275,000 total. I've already spoken with an attorney about the structure. It's clean, it can close in 30 days. Alternatively, we engage a property management company for the lot and split the lease income per our ownership percentages, and we set up a shared use agreement for the cabin with a buyout option. My brother stared at me. Where did you? He stopped. You hired an appraiser. Yes. When? When you first asked me to sign over the properties for $1. He looked at my sister-in-law. She was still reading the appraisal. You had this ready, he said. Not quite a question. I came prepared, I said. I always come prepared. This is the part where I want to be careful, because it would be easy to make my brother into a villain, and that's not quite right. He's not a bad person. He's a person who made a set of assumptions about me, that I was uninterested, uninformed, and would default to accommodation like I always had. And then he built a plan around those assumptions. The plan failed because the assumptions were wrong. He thought I was the little sister who didn't know what a capitalization rate was. He didn't know about the company. He didn't know that I'd spent 4 years making decisions involving much larger numbers than this, that I had advisors I trusted, that I'd learned early what it cost to not understand the documents you're signing. He didn't know, and I hadn't told him, because I'd spent 3 years quietly watching to see who in my family was interested in me, in my actual life, my actual self, and who was interested in the version of me that was easiest to manage. This meeting answered a question I'd been carrying for a long time. My mum started crying, not manipulative crying, genuinely distressed, the kind that happens when a version of reality she's held for a long time starts showing its seams. She said she didn't know what had happened to our family. She said she thought this was simple. She said she was sorry, which I believed, and that she hadn't known, which I also believed. I moved to the seat beside her. I kept my hand on hers. My brother asked me, quietly, whether I was going to make this difficult. No, I said. I'm offering you a fair deal. You don't have to take it, but I'm not signing that deed. He nodded once. He stood up. He and his wife left the room. My mum and I stayed for another 40 minutes. I told her some things I'd been holding. Not about the money, not yet, but about the years of feeling like the person the family accommodated around rather than included. She listened in a way she hadn't in a long time. Maybe ever. I don't know if it will change anything structurally. I think it was still worth saying. In the weeks that followed, my brother's attorney reached out to my attorney. We negotiated. He didn't have $275,000 liquid, which I'd expected, so we structured a buyout over 18 months for the commercial lot. He put 20% down, and the remainder is secured by the property itself. For the cabin, we set up a formal shared use agreement with documented maintenance cost sharing and a right of first refusal if either party wants to sell. It is not the warmest arrangement, but it is a fair one. I finally told my mum about the company last month. Not all of it, not the number, just that I'd done well, that I was financially secure, that she didn't need to worry about me the way she sometimes did. She cried again, different kind. She said she wished my dad had known. I told her I thought about that too. My brother and I have not spoken much since the hotel meeting. I don't know what that relationship becomes from here. I know that I stopped being the person who signs things without reading them. I know that I learned how to come to a table prepared, even when the table is in a hotel conference room and someone has put a document on your chair like a test. I know that my grandmother, who made biscuits from scratch and called me her girl, left me something worth protecting. And I protected it. The thing that stayed with me longest wasn't the deed. It wasn't even the sticky note with my brother's handwriting on it. The notary is available at 11, though I've thought about that note more times than I'd like to admit. What stayed with me was the chair. Someone had placed that envelope on my chair, not on the table where I'd have to reach for it, on my chair, so I'd have to hold it the moment I arrived, before I'd even taken my jacket off. That detail was so deliberate, so carefully arranged, and yet it assumed I would be the same person I'd always been in that family. The one who receives things and accommodates, who takes what's handed to her and signs where she's told. I wasn't that person anymore. I'm not sure I ever fully was, I just hadn't found the moment to show it. There's a version of that hotel meeting where I walk in unprepared, where I see the deed, feel the familiar pull of not wanting to cause conflict, and pick up the pen. I've thought about that version. It would have cost me $275,000. And something harder to name. A kind of self-respect that, once surrendered, doesn't come back easily. The people at that table were counting on a specific version of me showing up. They had built the entire structure of that morning around the assumption that I wouldn't know my own worth. What I've come to understand is that knowing your worth isn't arrogance, it's homework. I hired an appraiser. I read the lease terms. I had an attorney review the will. None of that was aggressive. It was just thorough. It was the same rigor I'd applied to every significant decision in my professional life, finally brought home to a place where I'd historically left it at the door. That's the thing about integrity, the real kind, not the performative kind. It has to be consistent. You can't apply clear thinking and careful preparation everywhere, except the places that feel personal. The personal places are exactly where it matters most, because that's where people who know your history are most likely to use it against you. My brother isn't a monster. He made a calculation, and it was wrong. Part of what made it wrong was that he'd never updated his understanding of who I was. To him, I was still the younger sister who deferred, who took the path of least conflict, who could be moved by guilt and family pressure into doing things that weren't in her interest. He wasn't entirely wrong about the person I used to be. He was completely wrong about the person I'd become. That gap, between who people decide you are and who you've actually grown into is something you have to close yourself. Nobody hands you that correction. You have to walk into the room with your folder and slide it across the table and let the silence do the rest. My grandmother made biscuits from scratch. She woke before everyone else, and she woke quietly, and she made something real. I think about that when I think about her, and I think about what she actually gave me, not the property, though I'm grateful for it, but the reminder that the women in my family know how to show up prepared, how to make something out of what they have, how to do the quiet work before anyone else is watching. I protected what she left me. I think she would have recognized the effort.